Few video games have garnered the kind of legacy of Silent Hill, Konami's hit psychological horror franchise featuring a fog-covered town that torments those unlucky enough to be caught in its grasp. But to many, the series peaked with its second release on Sony's PlayStation 2. Konami's Team Silent created one of the most memorable and celebrated narratives in video game history, with intelligent storytelling and characters that were believable, relatable, and above all, tragic. The game follows an office clerk named James Sunderland, who arrives at Silent Hill to find his late wife Mary. James carries a letter from his beloved, requesting he meet her at their special place. Though James knows a dead person can't write a letter, his grief sees him venturing into town regardless, as he holds on to the wisp of hope that somehow Mary survived the terrible disease that took her life 3 years ago. The bar set by Silent Hill 2 made following up a difficult task, which only got harder with the disbandment of Team Silent after Silent Hill 4: The Room. Konami responded by outsourcing the series to Western studios Climax and Double Helix, but saw sales decline. Konami would later entrust Silent Hill to Czech developer Vatra Games, which released the near universally hated Silent Hill Downpour in 2012. There was a mysterious effort to revitalize the franchise in 2014 that captured viral enthusiasm for the struggling IP, but its release would never see the light of day. We'll talk about that project another time. By 2015, Konami Digital Entertainment had chosen a president, repositioning the company for staggering change. Hideki Hayakawa, known within Konami for his work with the highly profitable mobile game Dragon Collection, was handed leadership of the company and announced sweeping reforms for the storied game maker. Konami would later delist themselves from the New York Stock Exchange and go on to prioritize mobile gaming, halting the vast majority of its games division to target Japan's widely saturated mobile market. The Japanese market is populated with consumers who are extremely particular and discerning, and it is this environment that has helped us polish game design quality to such a high level. Hideki Hayakawa, CEO of Konami Digital Entertainment. Konami's casinos also enjoyed a boom thanks to changes in the Japanese gambling scene, and the company drew from their catalog of popular video game IP to brand Pachislot or pachinko machines rather than releases for PlayStation, Nintendo, or Xbox home consoles. Konami has moved away from the business sector in which it made its name, wrote Gambling Insider's Tom Lewis, commenting on the closure of Kojima Productions LA, a studio established just 2 years prior to Hayakawa's rise. The company canceled the latest game in the long-running Silent Hill franchise and publicly parted ways with Hideo Kojima, a man who is to video games what the likes of Quentin Tarantino are to cinema. With an emboldened mobile gaming director prioritizing phone and slot machine content, any hope of Silent Hill's return had been officially snuffed out. After a decade of silence, Konami asked fans to tune in for a special Silent Hill presentation on October 19, 2022. As excited as I was to hear this announcement, it was tough to see that red logo after every decision the company made at the expense of its creators and fans. I'd be lying if I said I didn't get comfortable reading the phrase, "Eat shit, Konami." The event opened to a rendered in-game cinematic taking place in an all-too-familiar public restroom. The world was teased with an upcoming remake of Silent Hill 2, one of the most respected artistic endeavors in video games. It wasn't until after the trailer that I noticed the remake was, once again, being handled out of house, and of all the studios to be entrusted with such a lofty request, few anticipated developer Bloober Team to be given the honor. Now, I'm alright with Bloober Team. They've proven they know how to build atmosphere and tension, and their sound design is extraordinary. But in my experience, things often fell apart as their narratives unfolded, and their style was notorious for lacking subtlety. Though I've never harbored a negative opinion of the developer, I can't say I enjoyed the idea of them helming a project so close to my heart, and especially where so much could go so wrong. Everybody is thinking and concerned about sex and death, always. If we want to scare, shake, or touch the users or spectators, then we have to think about sex and death deeply. Takeyoshi Sato, character and CGI director of Team Silent. Konami's decision to tap Bloober Team for the remake wasn't winning the developer a lot of favor, especially after their release of The Medium, which made headlines for insensitively handling its heavy traumatic elements. It fails to understand any of the reasons Silent Hill is a horror icon, while continually trying to ape its aesthetic, themes, and characters with the grace and decorum of a reversing dump truck without its tires on. Jade King, lead features editor for The Gamer 2022. Silent Hill 2 required a firm grasp of the nuanced psychology present in James Sunderland's Odyssey, and without proof that Bloober Team could carefully preserve it, my excitement turned to anxious dread. What if after 10 years, Konami hadn't changed at all? What if Bloober Team was just the next ill-suited developer to be crushed beneath the weight of Konami's tossed-about IP? The 2022 Silent Hill transmission was led by former Nintendo programmer turned producer Motoi Okamoto, who promised a new era for the franchise that would fulfill the hopes of longtime fans, which he counted himself among. Okamoto was joined on stage by original Team Silent creature designer Masahiro Ito, confirming his active involvement in Konami's project. There was also a video message from series composer Akira Yamaoka, who expressed his own excitement for creating a new soundtrack for the remake. It was powerful seeing members of Team Silent discuss their work on a new project, especially one so fundamental to my appreciation of video games as art. Okamoto teased other projects during the event, closing with an intriguing teaser for a Japan-focused entry called Silent Hill F, to be entrusted to developer Neobards. We reviewed that back in October if you're curious. Both releases were part of an exclusive partnership with Sony Interactive Entertainment and set to launch on PlayStation 5 and Steam. Getting members of Team Silent back together for the remake had me feeling a bit more optimistic, but my concerns still hadn't subsided. I'd convinced myself that Okamoto knew something we didn't, and had assurances that Bloober Team was remaining as true as possible to the original game. Choosing to remake Silent Hill 2 in the first place was an interesting strategy, and it had me curious if Okamoto was inspired by the success of developer Capcom, who also struggled with the decline of its survival horror IP before righting the ship. Capcom saw great return in remaking classics from the Resident Evil catalog, which allowed fans to reacquaint themselves with the heights of the franchise while educating new talent on what made those entries iconic to begin with. By 2023, Capcom had released 3 classic modernizations, including the phenomenal revisiting of RE4, a game that is considered by many to be the gold standard of modern remakes. If Okamoto's intuition proved to be founded and the opportunity the company saw in the market for psychological horror was real, Konami may not only reinvigorate the franchise by re-releasing one of the best games ever made, but propel themselves back into a strong position in AAA games. However, if Okamoto was wrong, Silent Hill risked failing all over again, and perhaps for the last time. Located in southern Poland, Kraków sits north of the Carpathian Mountains, situated on both sides of the Vistula River. It's a peaceful place of cold winters, mild summers, and promising futures. Kraków avoided mass destruction during World War II, so it's common to see beautifully preserved medieval buildings and castles in a mere day trip from the city. It's a place well regarded for its youthful population of students, some of which are bound for work with developer Bloober Team. Founded by Piotr Pabiano and Piotr Balakwicz in 2008, Bloober Team was built in reverence for video game horror. The team garnered acclaim for their 2016 release, Layers of Fear, and continued to surprise players in 2017 with Observer. Bloober Team also worked with Microsoft for a timed launch of The Blair Witch for Xbox One in summer 2019. But working with Konami and Sony to deliver for one of the most passionate fan bases in gaming would mean dedicating their very best, and the team knew they'd need to push boundaries in order to make something special. Producer Okamoto claims Bloober Team were the most enthusiastic in their interest to work on Silent Hill, and it gave him the confidence he needed to trust in their capabilities as developers. Bloober's Matois Lennart reinforced that his team was comprised of die-hard fans, many of which were driven to game development simply because of Team Silent's work. "We didn't want to compete with the original. If we copy it, we will lose," said Matois when asked about his focus directing the Silent Hill 2 remake. In regards to acting approach, they made it more realistic rather than unsettling or Lynchian. Though I will always be a fan of the heightened reality of the original and the stilted dialogue of Guy Seehey and Monica Taylor Horgan, changing direction meant Bloober Team's Silent Hill 2 could have its own identity while remaining true to narrative. This decision led to a shift that reverberated throughout the game, exchanging much of the dream-style dialogue between characters for more realistic and modern character interactions. I found it to be an effective approach, and appreciated the solid performances of Luke Roberts as James Sunderland and Salome Gunnesdatter as Maria and Mary. The original Silent Hill 2 is still the deep, relevant work of art it's always been, and the remake doesn't alter that. If you can forgive the tank controls, I'd still recommend experiencing it even today. Thankfully, much of what made the original such a success has been preserved, making for a longer, more terrifying work. We have to remember that we aren't dealing with the original game. We are dealing with the memory of the original game. Matoise Lenart, Silent Hill 2 game director. By the time we first step out onto the streets of Silent Hill, we've already taken in an impressive audio experience thanks to award-winning sound designer Arkadiusz Rakowski, who's crafted environments in the Layers of Fear series, The Blair Witch, The Medium, and many other projects. Rakowski has crafted an immersive soundscape that's faithful to the original, yet even more gritty and encompassing. The phantom rustling of dry corn stalks, windswept earth, and the metallic creaks and groans of rusted metal keep us on edge, adding an appropriate amount of hesitation in every step toward the waking fog. While Akira Yamaoka's new score doesn't seek to replace his original, the remake's OST complements it well, re-emphasizing its familiar melodies in different ways but carrying the same emotion. It still feels like Silent Hill 2, and that's what's most important. But pleasing the majority of the fanbase was always going to be an uphill battle. Bloober Team had to be willing to consider feedback without responding to every outspoken or elevated voice. We need to remember that we are the experts in the field. We have lived and breathed this title for the last 3 years. Magic Glom, producer for Bloober Team. Matoise and Magic were asked about the toxicity they received during an interview with GameSpot's Kurt Indivina and Tamar Hussein, who questioned whether or not it had affected the team's working process. "We had been preparing internally for pushback," said Bloober Team producer Magic Glom, who acknowledged that the team hadn't demonstrated a proficiency with 3D combat, and that it became a focus to put the community at ease with a combat trailer. "It is understandable that people would have fears about us making a game at that time. I remember relief washing over me as I engaged with the remake's first enemy. Combat was surprisingly smooth, and fighting the first lying figure solidified that Bloober Team had the chops to modernize James' interaction with monsters. He now has the ability to quick dodge and handle melee weapons and firearms naturally. The experience is dramatically benefited by the remake's immersive third-person camera, smooth controls, and accessible shortcuts for weapons, maps, and healing items to maintain an engaging forward pace. Players only interacted with the menu for advanced puzzle solving, likely when peeling through documents and memos, preserving the positive aspects of the classic menu. Bloober Team also did a fantastic job adding natural texture to Silent Hill 2's characters. Every bit of new content and dialogue is not only enjoyable, but feels spiritually at home with the original, which really says something when discussing one of the greatest video games of all time. But I need to give ample warning before we get much further. There are themes present in Silent Hill 2 that, while vital to the narrative, can trigger anxiety and discomfort. If you don't feel comfortable hearing about the game's association with suicide or sexual trauma, then I want to thank you for watching this far in, and if you wouldn't mind, shoot me a like if you're departing. I'm also going to be delving into major spoiler territory, and I highly suggest you experience this content within the context of the game before we look closer to analyze. Bloober Team really made this game their own, and the way the team riffed on the PS2 classic speaks volumes about their expertise. Neely's Bar contains the first real instance of Bloober Team straying from source to reshape the game, and it pays off. The gist is to repair the bar's jukebox to play a broken vinyl record, unlocking a part of James' memory. This is a multi-part puzzle leading the player to never-before-accessible locations in Silent Hill, and the level of interactive depth added is something I've wanted for decades. The The bar itself actually feels significant to James this time, as the remake casts allusions to his hidden struggle with alcohol, something that wasn't heavily inferred prior. That said, I do look at James nourishing himself with health drinks a bit differently after playing this version of the game. We get another glimpse at James' weakness at Heaven's Night, when Maria tricks him into stopping for a cozy timeout with a couple of drinks. The way Luke Roberts stares at that poured glass on the counter says everything. He wants to give in a little. He's wondering in that moment where things could lead with Maria, despite his devotion to Mary. James' hesitation in this performance is palpable, and it's a great example of something that couldn't have been achieved on the PlayStation 2. There's also some new environmental storytelling associated with James that I found interesting. The examinable lost and found box at the strip club's bar counter contains a scratched out photo of a woman, a pair of sunglasses, and a wedding ring. Does it belong to James? Who knows, but you may have noticed he is missing his in the intro cinematic, which seems intentional. We find another bit of lore associated with James in the labyrinth when we stumble upon his out-of-place office cubicle. It's full of strewn papers, charts, and an old work computer. This communicates that on top of dealing with Mary's sickness at home, James was overworked and stressed professionally. You'll also notice a bubblehead nurse wandering around behind his desk, and the implications of that are also suggestive. These little allusions color James ever so slightly, but are significant enough to raise questions about his character, something we do more and more as the narrative continues. After departing Heaven's Night, James and Maria head to a couple brand new, albeit transitory locations in Silent Hill. Maria brings us to Cat Street to enter the Moonlight Grove, a romantic park for lovers where she imparts the town legend of the Lady of Light, a tale that reads as metaphor for James crossing Toluca Lake to find Mary. Though the grove exists to serve this cutscene, it provides precious insight into Maria's character that often goes without appreciation. Maria doesn't want to simply have sex with James. She wants to completely take over Mary's place in his life. Yes, she's a psychologically manifested dancer created by a twisted ghost town bent on punishing its inhabitants, but she has feelings. Salome Gunnarsdottir was the perfect modern Maria. She knows how to play coy with Luke Roberts, and the chemistry between them allows Luke to hit that perfect note of aloof reluctance, or perhaps disguised curiosity. The next stop on our tour is the Reverie Theater, a location exclusive to the remake where we have our second encounter with Eddie Dombrowski. It's a toned-down, less goofy version of the classic pizza scene in Pete's Bowl-O-Rama, and even though I love that scene for its comedic quality, this one depicts Eddie better. The scene starts with James entering the theater to find Laura. He picks up an empty pizza box from the floor and sees Eddie sitting in front of a blank movie screen eating a tub of Toluca ice cream with his bare hands. James makes an offhand comment about Eddie getting his appetite back, and we watch in real time as Eddie quietly crumbles in his chair. When asked if he's going to help him find Laura, Eddie reminds him that he isn't worthy of his help. As James exits through to the next screening room, a discerning eye can glimpse through the white noise a scene of James smothering Mary to death with a pillow, the truth our protagonist has been suppressing from the beginning. This isn't a scene I hear many discuss, but it made me feel for Eddie in a way that the PlayStation 2 version never did. Just look at the guy. He's drowning in a tub of ice cream because he's completely given up, and doesn't believe he's worthy of respect. It's noteworthy because this is the last time we see Eddie before he truly falls off the deep end and embraces violence. But what's tragic about this to me is that James and Eddie are incredibly alike. What James finds disgusting in Eddie, he refuses to identify in himself. They are both overcome by their indulgences and guilt, and are too cowardly to tell the truth. Ultimately, their powerlessness leads them to commit violence that completely undoes them. And the fact that neither of them are allowed to see themselves in the other at this point in the story felt very impactful. Another part of the game to see a significant overhaul are the main mazes, especially Brookhaven Hospital. Though it was always fun to poke around and collect scraps of lore, Brookhaven was never my favorite to navigate. I'd always get stuck somewhere looking for key access, and it always had me backtracking all over the place before I regained my bearings. I must not have been alone, because Bloober Team created a version of Brookhaven that I actually enjoy. The revised pathing and puzzles contained within feel much more streamlined, while retaining every detail that made the location so interesting to begin with. The updated graphics and sound make mazes like Brookhaven more terrifying than ever, and the same can be said for Woodside, Blue Creek, and the ever-so-harrowing Toluca Prison, which demands a play in the dark with some comfy headphones. But it is the Labyrinth that makes a strong case for containing one of the best psychological horror experiences to ever be captured inside a video game. The Labyrinth is a manifestation of James' deepest subconscious. It's a place where he is forced to reflect on his own reality and how it intersects with the reality of others. As James wends the shifting labyrinth, his experience coincides with that of the tormented Angela Orozco, a teenager exhibiting signs of suicidal distress. James has made attempts to accompany Angela before, but he's always rejected. She seems to have an insight into James that few other characters do, and she's made it clear from the beginning that when it comes to James Sunderland, she prefers distance. The acting by Gianna Keel here is almost scary. She has completely taken on Angela Orozco, and every spoken word is haunting and convincing. The corridors of the labyrinth have taken on the form of a battered 1970s-style wood panel apartment, reminiscent of those seen earlier on the surface. What ensues is the living nightmare of her sexually abusive father, as the collapsing visage of her home gives way to walls of damaged, breathing flesh and the exposed motorized pistons tearing through them. This is how Bloober Team unveil Angela's phantom tormentor, the depraved manifestation known as the Abstract Daddy. Let it be known, every boss encounter in this remake far surpasses its PlayStation 2 counterpart, which is understandable given the limitations of the era, but the Abstract Daddy sequence stands above them all, going miles further to depict Angela's horrific home life in a way that is psychologically intense, but true to her emotional experience. I've heard some attempt to shame Bloober Team over this intense display of a history of sexual violence, and people are allowed to hold that opinion, but I felt like the developers threaded the needle perfectly here. The remake pays homage to the original in many ways, but one interesting trail of breadcrumbs confirms a greater theory about Silent Hill with roots dating back to the message boards of the early 2000s. There are 26 discoverable strange photographs, each depicting odd scenes with numbers written on the back. These curios perplexed players for a month before Reddit user Dale Robinson collected them all, deciphering them into alphanumerical code. Together, the photographs read, "You've been here for 2 decades," a phrase alluding to James being trapped in a repeating cycle since 2001. Thankfully for James, the new endgame content is perfect for revisiting town, as it includes unlockables that can only be accessed after completing the game. Among these are 2 additional endings, bringing the total of possible conclusions to a count of 8. These outcomes fit perfectly alongside the classics, and are accessible by procuring hidden items in New Game Plus. Satisfying the Bliss ending requires that James collect the rusted key from a safe in Pete's Bolorama, and the small chest from Brookhaven Hospital's garden gazebo. Opening the chest reveals a bottle of White Claudia, a mysterious hallucinogen from the original Silent Hill. Drinking the White Claudia just before playing the videotape in the Lakeview Hotel transports James into the television. This ending sees James committing to his denial, as he wanders into a hallucination to exist with Mary in a memory bound to videotape. The second ending is titled Stillness, and cannot be obtained without having first received the in-water ending. You'll need to collect the Key of Sorrow from a car on Wiltsey Street, then gather specific documents in the Woodside Apartments, Brookhaven Hospital, and in the Lakeview Hotel to form a combination code. Using the Key of Sorrow and lock combination in the hotel manager's safe unlocks an ominous postcard featuring Toluca Lake, a place you'll always return to. This ending is an alternate version of the classic in-water sequence that provides James with an amount of peace before he takes his own life. As he admits his fault and failure, James expresses to Mary that he cannot go on without her, and as his eyes well with tears, Mary unexpectedly comforts James from the back seat. This is the most moving performance I've ever witnessed in a video game, and arguably the peak of Bloober's Silent Hill 2. Seeing James soothed by Mary's love is a powerful moment that never fails to break me, and I see it as the culmination of James Sunderland's journey. Stillness is significant because it sees James finally achieve true understanding. He doesn't turn to the back seat for Mary's grace like he does in the in-water ending, where he sees nothing. Instead, James feels Mary's touch. He hears her words, and when he finally glances in the rearview mirror, a part of him is calmed by her smile. To me, the symbolic takeaway is that James stops searching for confirmation of Mary's love. He doesn't need to do that anymore. This scene demonstrates that James finally believes he is worthy of that love, and even though he can't live without her, he knows Mary is truly waiting for him. James Sunderland was the first video game character I've ever connected with, and by the end of the game, that connection truly challenged my perspective as a young adult. James is one of the best written characters regardless of media that I've ever had the pleasure of experiencing. He's not a hero, and yet I hesitate to call him a villain. He's a flawed character that carries a heart, and we've watched him pay the price for over 2 decades. Konami and Team Silent made Silent Hill 2 more than a video game, and the effect it has had is immeasurable. After playing this version, I feel like I know James Sunderland better than ever before, and that's something I've never thought any remake from any studio could possibly achieve. When Silent Hill 2 Remake dropped on October 8, 2024, Konami and Bloober Team welcomed major success. The release sold over 2.5 million copies worldwide in its first year, and would go on to become one of the fastest-selling games in Silent Hill history, pushing the total number of franchise copies sold past its 13 million unit mark. The positive response from fans ensured Bloober Team would continue to work with Konami on future installments of this series. The remake went on to receive 5 nominations at the 2024 Game Awards, including Best Narrative, Best Action Adventure, Best Performance, Best Audio Design, and Best Score and Music. Luke Roberts was personally nominated for a Golden Joystick for Best Lead Performer in 2024, as well as a BAFTA in 2025 for Performer in a Leading Role. Salome Gunnarsdottir was also nominated for Best Supporting Performance at the 2024 Grand Game Awards, and presented the award for Best Horror Game in 2025, which was won by Silent Hill F. Konami were so pleased with the reception of Silent Hill 2 and 2025's Silent Hill F that Okamoto reported the series would be greenlit for annual release. And as glad as I am to see Silent Hill on top of the world again, this decision has me wary. The last thing any fan wants for Silent Hill right now is for it to lose momentum all over again. Looking back at Bloober Team's beginnings, it feels like they'd been working for a chance to develop Silent Hill from the start. Though they didn't always stick the landing, they took the time to learn, and didn't stop listening to a passionate fan base that could often be unkind. In the end, Bloober Team did the impossible, and delivered their own version of one of the greatest video games ever made. Thanks for taking the time to check out Superphase in this look back at the Silent Hill 2 remake. If you like what we're doing here, give us a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more gaming reviews, updates, and discussions. We really appreciate your feedback and support. Be safe, be well, and cheers.